Hey, this is Kenny's Audiophile Record Reviews. Thank you very much as always for viewing my video. Please like and subscribe. I sincerely appreciate that. In this video, I'm going to show some albums I was listening to as a child and buying as a child. Now, I'm going to give the definition of a child for the purposes of this video. I'm going to assume a child goes up to the age of 18. So that is the definition of a child in this video. Everything I was buying as a child, up to the age of 18. There's a few of them where I extended to 19, so I cheated a little bit. But I have to say this to those of you who are new to my audience, new to my listening audience or viewing audience. I've been listening to jazz my entire life. When I mean my entire life, my whole life, because my father was a jazz fan, so I was exposed to jazz at an early age. And my father, every time you got in his car, and like I said, this is for the purposes of people who are new to my channel, my father had his radio station tuned to the local radio station in the greater Los Angeles area of Southern California. I think the call letters were KBCA, and the name of the DJ was Chuck Niles, who was a famous DJ here in Southern California, in the greater Los Angeles area, I should say. And he was to jazz in Southern California what Vin Scully was to the Dodgers in baseball, what Chick Hearn was to Lakers in basketball, and what Bob Miller was to Los Angeles Kings in hockey. All three of those are Hall of Famers. As far as I'm concerned, Chuck Niles is a Hall of Famer when it comes to jazz DJs. He just simply was. He was that great. But I always heard jazz when I stepped in my father's car throughout my entire life. So jazz was not new to me. Later on in life, it was always part of me. But in terms of buying records as a child up to age 18/19, I'm going to show you some records. My main focus of record buying was not jazz when I was a child. I mean, up to 18. I was buying records, but not a lot. I was into like groups like Tower of Power, James Brown, Marvin Gaye, the Beatles, the Temptations, Four Tops, the Doors, Isaac Hayes, Yvonne Elliman and Donna Summer during the disco era, Roberta Flack, Carole King, my favorite band in high school, Parliament Funkadelic. All that type of music I was buying in the 70s as a child, with a few jazz albums here and there. Now, grant you, I was listening to jazz radio, and those of you who grew up in the 70s, we used to record music off the radio, on our cassette decks. So we didn't have to buy the album. So I was doing that for sure. But I didn't get heavy into jazz. I mean, really heavy into jazz until probably the age of 19, 20. And at that time, I was really in a huge exploratory mode when it came to jazz. I was buying like Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie, Dexter Gordon, all the greats. From the age of 20 up to now, I was buying records of all the greats. But these are just a small sample size of the records I purchased as a child. And I'm going to start with this record here. Again, like I said, up to the age 18/19. I'm going to consider that a child for the purposes of this video. You can believe some of those you purchased in the comment section below. Al Jarreau, All Fly Home. This is a great version of Paul McCartney's or the Beatles' She's Leaving Home. That is on their Sgt. Pepper's album. But he has a great version of She's Leaving Home on that album. I was buying records like that, in the 70s as a teen, as my child. As it turns out, my years as a child, let's say for ages of 10 through 20, were 1970 and 1980. So I was 10 years old in 1970, 20 years old in 1980. And this is an amazing live jazz album. I have to do a review on this album at some point. Al Jarreau, Look to the Rainbow, recorded live in Europe. He does a nice version, I think is Take 5 on this album. A tremendous live version of Take 5. I'll have to review this on a video real soon. And Dave Brubeck, I was listening to him as a child. Not this version of the record. I have original pressing floating around here in my room. This version was issued in the 90s, 80s or 90s, I believe. And but Dave Brubeck, because that iconic, this is Time Out album, by the way, his iconic version of Take 5 is tremendous. And even if you didn't like jazz, you knew about that song. And this group, some of you may not think of them as jazz, but I'm mentioning them in this video anyway. Hiroshima. And I was into them big time because I love their vocal style and stylings. And it reminds me of a vocal style from the 60s. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I'm going to review a CD in this video at the end of this video. So please watch to the end of the video. I'm going to review a really good free jazz live CD at the end of this video. But Hiroshima, when they first came out, I was into their music because I like the sound, the vibrant groove, and the style, the vocal style of that group. This was issued in 1980. I just want to show the cover. It's so cool because the iconic Los Angeles City Hall in the background. This is one of the best pictures of an album cover I've ever seen in my life. I was heavy into this album, Walking in Space. Now, this was issued in the 60s, but I bought it as a child in the 70s. Now, I listened to this Quincy Jones version of Walking in Space is tremendous. If you haven't heard his version Walking in Space, check it out on YouTube. Quincy Jones, Walking in Space. And this has some jazz legends on here. This has Bob James, Freddie Hubbard, Roland Kirk, Jerome Richardson, Ray Brown, Chuck Rainey, Eric Gale, Toots Thielemans. Very nice effort by Quincy Jones. Now this next album is from a highly underrated vocalist. His name is John Lucien. I was heavy into his voice and his music and his sound in my later teens. And he has 2 songs on here you should definitely check out. If you don't know about John Lucien, check out Rashida by John Lucien. And also check out Lady Love by John Lucien. Those 2 songs, Rashida and Lady Love. They're excellent vocal efforts by John Lucien. This is best of album, by the way. The type of music I was buying and purchasing in the as a child. Like I said, I was recording other types of jazz on my cassette deck, you know, some of the old school jazz. But these are the type of records I was buying as a child, reissue records. Charlie Byrd. I was heavy into the Charlie Byrd sound. I still am because he is a master in terms of playing that acoustic guitar, one of the best who ever lived, in my opinion. This is really not jazz. Maybe this is jazz funk. This is a group called Seawind. This was issued on CTI Records. This is Windows of a Child. But they had a couple of great songs as a group. This group Seawind, and I was heavy, like I say, heavy into their sound, I should say, at that time, the later part of the 70s when I was in high school. And I bought this one as in my later teens, Ron Carter Peg Leg. I believe this album was issued, I think, in 1977, 78. And I was always into Ron Carter and the way he played the bass. I was never a musician, but I love hearing Ron Carter play. Stanley Clarke, School Days. I was definitely into this in my later teens. I didn't get into his more greater works until like a few years later, like Children of Forever. I bought this later on, not in the 70s, but I think Children of Forever is a landmark album for Stanley Clarke, for sure. One you should definitely look into and listen to on YouTube, in my opinion. This was produced by Chick Corea. It came out around 1973 is the date on the album. And I bought this album as a child in the later teens. This came out in 1979, I believe, on Pablo Records. I Love Brazil. I'll show you the song listing on this effort by Sarah Vaughan. It's a nice album. So as a child, as a teenager, like I said, I'm considering up to the ages 18/19 as a child for the purposes of this video, just for fun. And I always loved Wes Montgomery and that great, tremendous playing style. Even if you didn't like jazz, he just had this tremendous style, like George Benson, that regardless of the genre, you can't not like Wes Montgomery, in my opinion. In the high school, I was heavy into Maynard Ferguson, his big band sound. He's a tremendous trumpet player, so I had to include this one in this video. This was issued in 1978, I think. I was like in the 11th grade, 12th grade, whatever. I bought that at that time, and my brothers introduced me to the next couple of albums, or at least this one, not the next one, Chick Corea and Return to Forever, because this features Flora Purim and Stanley Clarke. This is a landmark jazz fusion album, and I was listening to this when I was in high school in my teens. Another album I was listening to and purchased as a child, and everybody had this one. Getz Gilberto, not this version of it. This one was issued recently by Analog Productions Acoustic Sounds, but I have original pressing on the shelf, and that's the one I was listening to. The iconic song, The Girl from Ipanema, featuring Astrid Gilberto on vocals, Stan Getz saxophone. Also, the album includes Joao Gilberto, Antonio Carlos Jobim, a landmark album for sure. Flora Purim, she had this nice wordless vocal phrasing that is tremendous on her albums. This is her Butterfly Dreams album. And this album has a wordless vocal of version of the song Windows. This is an album called Encounter. Check out Flora Purim and the song Windows. When I first heard it, when this album came out in 1977, it was always one of my favorite songs by her for sure. And I also was heavily into the voice and the vocal style of Mark Murphy. This is a really great album. Check out the song Stolen Moments on this song. On this album, Mark Murphy, Stolen Moments. It's a very nice vocal version of the song. As a teenager, I was into Jeff Lorber fusion for sure. I really was into the jazz fusion aspects because it was close to the type of music I was listening to in the pop and rock realm. So I was into jazz fusion, like Miles Davis's Bishop's Brew and, Jack Johnson. I should have bought those out too. I just forgot. And Antonio Carlos Jobim, there's two albums that I was listening to in my later teens and high school. This is Antonio Carlos Jobim's Wave album and his Tide album. To me, the Wave and Tide album are a combination of jazz, bossa nova, and easy listening. That describes the sound, at least to me, as I interpret the sound of the great maestro Antonio Carlos Jobim. And I was heavily into those two albums because I just love the easy listening aspects combined with jazz on those two albums. And some of you may not think of this vocalist as jazz, excuse me, but I do for the purpose of this video. I have a lot of his albums from that era, from that time, from the 70s. Michael Frankston is his Art of Tea album. I think in high school he had this song called Tiger in the Rain, and I really love that song. I think it may have came out my senior year of high school. I forgot the exact year. I should have brought that album out. The Art of Tea, Michael Franks. But check out Tiger in the Rain by Michael Franks. This one, it was introduced to me in the early 70s. It's been part of my life when it came out. This album was purchased by my brother, so I heard it my entire life. Karma, Pharoah Sanders, one of the greater jazz albums you can ever hear. I was into that sound as a child, literally, in the early 70s. I think this is the first Weather Report album I bought. It's Mr. Gone. I bought this when I was, I think, maybe the senior year in high school. And then I went back and bought every Weather Report album. They're like somewhere down there on my shelf in that area. I have virtually every Weather Report album on vinyl format. And I love this when I was in high school, like I said, because of the jazz fusion aspects of the album and was close to what I was listening to in terms of pop and rock. There's this song in here called Punk Jazz, which features great Jaco Pastorius, that great jazz electric bass player who left us too soon, but that brother can play that bass. And I was heavily into this album when I was in high school. I think in the 11th grade, maybe 12th grade. And this album is I wore this album out through high school and college. This is George Benson's White Rabbit album. I was listening to this as a child, through my college years, even through now. George Benson's version of White Rabbit is sensational. And on this album, you have Billy Cobham Drums, Herbie Hancock piano, Ron Carter bass, Airto Morea percussion, along with the horn section. I should say vibe and percussion, harp and woodwind section, brass section. You need to check this out. Check out George Benson, White Rabbit, and his song White Rabbit. This singer I was into as a child, and in high school. Her name is Gloria Lynn. She's been around for years. I have some of her 60s albums, 70s albums. She has a nice version of Stevie Wonder's Visions. Check out Gloria Lynn and Visions. It's a really, her interpretation of Stevie Wonder's masterpiece of the song is tremendous. Gloria Lynn. I saw her in person. Me and my parents went to this jazz club. It may have been in the early 80s. It was, at the time, it was called the Jazz Safari in Long Beach. And we saw her perform in person. But check out Gloria Lynn, her version of Stevie Wonder's Visions. I think you'll love that one. And obviously, Headhunters, introduced to me by my brothers when it came out. That I was listening to as a child. And this one as well, his Mwandishi album. I think that might mean composer in Swahili. I was listening to that as a child. And also in the later 70s, 78, this album, Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, acoustic piano. I was listening to that, as a teen. And like I said, I consider teens being a child. And you cannot forget Freddie Hubbard, Red Clay. I mean, if you don't like jazz, you're gonna love Red Clay. What a sensational effort it is by Freddie Hubbard on this iconic CTI album. Freddie Hubbard, Red Clay. And the last one, I was heavy into the Bob James sound at the time. I have a lot of Bob James albums from that era on CTI records. And I just love the way he played the keyboard and the way his interpretation of jazz fusion at that time on CTI records. But like I said, those are some of those I was purchasing as a teen. Excuse me, sorry. But I was listening to Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Miles Davis, like I said, Thelonious Monk, all, Larry Coryell, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, all the greats I was listening to on the radio. I was just purchasing those. Then when I was around 1920, around 1980, I was into buying all of those records. All the greats, Louis Armstrong, Dexter Gordon, all the greats. The 80s was like a renaissance for me in terms of buying records. It was like a literal renaissance for folk music, jazz, old school pop, and R&B. It was a renaissance for me because in the middle part of the 80s, people were getting rid of their records and giving away to thrift stores to get CDs. So I was on it. I was buying those records. That's why I was able to build this collection to a large part. So it was an exploratory renaissance at 80 for jazz and all genres, but especially jazz. And I was learning a lot, listening a lot, and reading a lot. People today have a huge benefit. Those who are young watching my audience, you have a huge benefit I'm going to mention this before I review this CD real quick. You have the benefit of YouTube and the internet, and you can explore music and get into music and enhance your music library and your musical knowledge for free on the internet. I wish I had that when I was younger, but it was a tremendous opportunity to buy those records when people were getting rid of them to buy CDs. But the album I would like to review, and as a CD actually was mentioned by one of my viewers in the comments section, is called Coltrane Live at Village Vanguard again. I'm going to do a very short commentary review on this CD. I'll show you the version of the CD I was listening to. That's the version of the CD I was listening to. Now, I may have a different version of the CD floating around somewhere, but the review is for this version of the CD. I'll show you the song listing. Hope it's coming out on the video. If not, I apologize. And on the CD you have, by the way, it was recorded in New York City at the Village Vanguard, May 28th, 1966. You have John Coltrane, soprano saxophone, tenor saxophone, bass clarinet. The great Pharoah Sanders on tenor saxophone and flute. Alice Coltrane, piano. She replaced McCoy Tyner. Jimmy Garrison, bass. Rashid Ali, drums. And Emmanuel Rahim, percussion. This is a free jazz live effort by John Coltrane and crew. I believe John Coltrane, I listened to this probably a week ago. I hope I memorized this correctly. I believe John Coltrane was in the left speaker and Pharoah Sanders was in the right speaker. Again, it's a free jazz effort. And some of you may not like the free jazz improvisational aspects of that live recording. Free jazz is very exploratory. It takes you in different directions that you don't think is the artist is going to go. I think that is a beauty of free jazz. The very artful, the very creative aspects of free jazz, I think, is tremendously beautiful. But like I said, because you don't know what direction the artist is going to go into. And then after they solo, they go back to the main theme. And it's a beautiful art form for jazz artists to improvise and showcase their talents, in which John Coltrane was a master at, and so was Pharoah Sanders. They both soloed tremendously great on this CD. It was a very nice live jazz performance by John Coltrane and crew. I'm going to talk about the sound first, and I'm going to get to performance second. The sound of this particular CD, I'm going to give somewhere between an 8 and 8.5, somewhere in that range, because the instruments were not, and I say this in a lot of CDs and other albums I listen to, they weren't as fine and defined as they should be in terms of definition, in terms of clarity, especially on the piano. I felt John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders, their instruments sounded fine on my system that I was listening to this on. The performance gets a 9. This is just a flat out 9. It's a solid improvisational masterpiece by Pharoah Sanders and John Coltrane in terms of improvisational jazz, free jazz. It's a tremendous live effort. Man, John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders, they were just blowing, man. They were just getting down on that CD. Check this out on YouTube. Performance a 9, sound between an 8, 8.5. Coltrane live at the Village Vanguard, again recorded in 1966. So you can leave some of the records you were listening to as a child in the comment section below. That's just a small sample size. That's not everything. Matter of fact, I forgot, artists like Phyllis Hyman, who sadly passed away at a young age. Phyllis Hyman, I forgot to bring out on one of her records, and several others. That's just a small sample size. There's going to be some glaring omissions, but please leave your comments in the comments section below. I really appreciate it. If you want to donate to my channel, there's a PayPal donation link in the description below. I use those donations to buy records, digital downloads, stuff for videos, and also there is a PayPal links in the description below as well for products for sale. I get a commission for the sale of those products. Even if you don't buy those products and go through those links and purchase something you really want, need, and desire, as long as you go through those links, I get a commission for that sale too. That'll help me out, earn funds to buy records and digital downloads and CDs to review on this channel. Thank you very much for viewing my video. Please like and subscribe. Leave your comments in the comments section below. God bless, strong love, and as always, more important than the music, keep the peace worldwide.